Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Michael Mon, owner-operator of Studio M Mastering, and today, part 2 of my 5-part series, the 5 things I wish I knew when I started Pro Tools. We'll get to those right after this. So today, part 2, super excited. We're starting to get into the nitty-gritty of Pro Tools. Got 5 things that I wish I knew when I started Pro Tools. Part 2 of a 5-part series. If you're new to the channel, please hit the like and subscribe button. Also, leave me a comment down below if there's something that you have a question about, something you want to learn more about. Leave me a comment, I'll respond, and it may be something I might be able to make a video about at another time. Again, part 2 of the 5-part series, 5 things I wish I knew when I was starting Pro Tools. And let's get to the DAW right now. All right, here we are. We're part 2 of the 5-part series, the 5 things I wish I knew when I started Pro Tools. We're in the DAW, we're in Pro Tools. This is Pro Tools 2020. We're in dark mode. So thing number 1, the thing I wish I knew when I was starting with Pro Tools. And when I started, there weren't that many options, but as it expanded and grew, there became a lot more options to everything. So we're going to talk about creating a new track. And I'm going to come here and I'll show you how I pull up that window. So we're going to come to track. We're going to come to new. And then that's going to pop up and double screen. Here we go, bring it over. Okay, so that's going to pop up this dialog. And so let's talk about the different types of tracks. So in Pro Tools Ultimate, which I have, we have the ability of dealing up to 7/1 and then some ambisonics and things like that. The average person, if you're dealing with Pro Tools First or Pro Tools Regular, you're only going to see the mono and stereo. They don't have the surround options, I don't believe. And correct me if I'm wrong. Hit me in the comments, I could be wrong. But yeah, so you've got the mono stereo all the way up to, craziness. So we can create a mono audio track, but we have a variety of different things we could choose. We could create an auxiliary input. And that's something that, like we can put a reverb on and things like that. We can use it for internal busing. We'll deal with that in another video. The things that I wish I knew, but we're kind of still sticking with the ultimate basics for these first couple videos. And then by the time we get to 3, we'll really kind of dive in. So we got an aux input. We've got a master fader, VCA master, which won't be in the Pro Tools Regular and the Pro Tools First. MIDI track, instrument track, video track, not in Pro Tools First, but it is in the Regular. I can have multiple video tracks. I think in the Pro Tools Regular, you can have 1 video track. You can actually create folder tracks. I'll show you that. We'll deal with that in like another video. But for now, we're just going to deal with these basic things. So we're going to create an audio track. If I wanted to do it in samples, meaning it's just recorded on the timeline and whatever session sample rate we're in, it's recording that. If we're doing things to like a click and we want to map it to the actual tempo of the song, we can go to ticks and we can create that audio track. We could actually name it here if we want. There's another way to name it and I'll show it in another second. And then by hitting that plus button allows us to create, let's just create a stereo and let's come to a master fader. Okay, so we're creating a track based on the tempo because we're in ticks, and then the master fader, you can do it in ticks. Never done anything that way, so I'm just going to stick with my old. So here we go. We're going to create these tracks. And you're going to see them pop up. And let's, okay. So we'll make them big. Now they're slightly different. This is your audio track, audio 1. If I double click in the name, I'm able to rename it. It pops up this dialog. And I could name this track 1. And then the master, it'll pop up the dialog and have to pull it back over. And I could label this like fader 1, whatever I wanted to do, right? You can't have the same track, so you can't have track 1, track 1, track 1, track 1. This is a unique identifier for when you're recording. So yeah, so you've got your setup here. So you've got your track. So the number 2, like the number 2 thing that I wish I knew, is dealing with this track here. So we have in Pro Tools, we have two main windows. There's the edit window that I'm showing here, and you're seeing a blue audio track and a red master fader. And then I have a mix window, which shows the blue audio track and the red master fader. If I had lots and lots and lots of tracks, you would see them coming across this mix window. Okay, so we have the 2 main windows. You got the mix, you got the edit window. There are different things that we can do. Actually, in the next video, I'm going to talk to you about all the different options of what we can see in the mix and edit windows. Things that I definitely wish I knew. But for now, just the 2 basic things. And if you're on a Mac or you're on a PC, a Mac, it's Command equals, and you can swap between the 2. A PC, Control equals. And that's a real quick way. Or if you're like me and you've got a little controller, I've got a little fader port, which I love, having a single fader to be able to automate. Love to have a couple more, but 1 fader is good. It doesn't take up too much desk space. I'm able to hit that button and get that back and forth. So part 1, types of tracks: mono, stereo, audio track, aux input, master fader, MIDI track, instrument track. And we'll show each of those as videos progress in use. And then you've got your mix window, which is here. And that's just basically your mixer. This is what you can view. You don't want to see a waveform. You don't want to see anything else. And then you have your edit window. And this, if we had a clip in here, we'd see the waveforms and all of that. Okay, so in fact, I'll just import some audio real fast. And just so you can see waveform here. All right, so I dropped in. So we just went and found a bass, dropped it in, and so should be able to hear it there. All right, so we got a bass guitar. You can see the waveform. This is a track. If I tried to drag it down, this master fader has nothing to do with like any clips. It is basically just a volume fader for my outputs 1 and 2. So if I'm doing this, hitting play, I can turn down that fader. And then it's the same kind of thing here where I can turn this fader down. It doesn't affect the master fader, but no signal comes out of it. So just to give you, it's just a way of, like, if you're dealing with a regular mixer, a regular console, you have, your channel faders, and then you usually have a master. That's the exact same thing that we just created here. Okay. So now one of the big things with Pro Tools, we're in the edit window. We have a bass track here. And one of the big things that really, really stumped me early on in Pro Tools was learning these edit modes. So up here in the left-hand side, you're going to see slip mode, shuffle mode, spot mode, and then grid mode. So if I'm set up to bars and beats, which I'm currently not set up to bars and beats, because I just imported this audio file from another session, didn't tempo map it, do any of that kind of stuff. So the grid really doesn't do anything for me. But if you can see the grid lines, they would mimic whatever I've set up. And currently my grid is set up at 1 second. I could come here to bars and beats, and so now it's set up to one measure, and I could set it up to like a quarter note. And so now each grid would technically be a quarter note if I had recorded to a click track on that tempo and it was mapped to there, you could see that quarter note. Okay, so the grid is a way to kind of just, you can see how things are. It helps in like the editing mode. Plus it forces me when I drop my cursor, it only drops on the nearest whatever measurement of my grid I have set up. If I'm on quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes, it drops it to the closest. So when I'm dealing in like video post and I've got it set up to like a frame, I can cut on the frame. Slip mode, this basically, we can see the grid still there behind. Now I've turned it off, but you can turn it on by turning that grid measurement on. Slip mode allows me to drop my cursor anywhere on the timeline. I'm not limited. If you're looking at my thing, you're seeing, 5 seconds, 18 seconds, 575 samples. I can come highlight. I can cut, get rid of that. I can move this wherever I want. There's zero consequences, right? So now I'm back to normal. Okay. So slip mode, you can kind of do whatever you want. Shuffle mode. So say you're dealing with a project and you want something from the back end of your session to move forward. So you could come here. Let's go back to slip mode because I'll just cut out I'll cut out this much of the bass. So now I have this gap and I want to get rid of this gap. So if I come to shuffle mode and I'm here in shuffle mode, if I highlight that section that's missing and I cut that section, might help if I was in shuffle mode. Okay, here we go. I went one too many. Okay, so if I'm in shuffle mode, I cut that out. Now the back end comes in and it only affects the track that you have highlighted. So if I had multiple tracks and I wanted to move everything, I would have to make sure that this section was highlighted on all of the tracks for all of that to take effect. Otherwise, I'm having to go do it individually, and that's kind of a pain. But shuffle mode basically just shuffles everything. So if I wanted to, say I create a new clip here and I wanted to move this clip a little bit, and let's, so I'm like nudging it there. So like this track, what was behind it moved to keep that same distance between. So if so whatever you're doing in shuffle mode can be a very useful tool. We're going to hit the undo a bunch to just get back to our normal. Okay. Shuffle mode, really useful tool, really useful mode, but it can really wreak havoc sometimes if you're trying, especially like in the post world, and even in music, if you're trying to get rid of a little bit of a gap, but you only want to get rid of it in part of a section, that can be really challenging because it affects everything that's behind it. So sometimes you're having to create a whole new track, move some stuff down, go into shuffle mode, kill it, and then move it back up so that it keeps where it was. So there are ways to work around. There's no perfect thing. I killed myself a couple of times. Not necessarily killed myself, but I hurt myself and cost myself a lot of time by not realizing that I was in shuffle mode, did some edits, did some cuts, came back, and my dialogue was nowhere in sync with the video and had to basically re-import all of that and kind of rebuild from scratch. And I'd done a whole bunch. I'd replaced a lot of lines, and it was not fun, but you live and learn. So, and then, so we get to the final mode. We get to the spot mode. And then spot mode allows us, so if I click on my clip here, it will bring up a dialogue and it will talk about, so right now we're in minutes and seconds. If we were in time code, it would show us like the time code where this initial clip was. I could come here and, so we're back into the minutes and seconds. I can speak. Say I wanted to move it to 20 seconds. Come here, put it to 20 seconds, and now it moved the whole clip to 20 seconds. So it's actually very useful when you're trying to bring stuff in and say, oh, if I've recorded 2 bars and beats in my setup, in my dialogue window when I'm here, and it pops up. If I go to bars and beats, I can say, oh, I want to move this piece, and that needs to be at bar 17. Boom, it moved it to bar 17, right? And so if I'm dropping in, grabbing something from my clips bin, if I'm bringing that in and I am in spot mode, I can say, oh, I know this is mapped to the right tempo. I just need it in the chorus. Boom, here we go. So those are your modes. Those are used when you're editing. 99% of the time, you'll probably be in slip. Occasionally, you'll be in grid, shuffle, or spot, depending on what you're wanting to do. But knowing those 4 modes really gets you kind of the overall view of how to operate inside of Pro Tools. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about are your tools. So this little tool window up here, you have a zoom tool. So if I click on the zoom tool, I can highlight a section, and now that's what's on the screen. So I can, there are key commands, and we'll talk about those in a second. So I can do that. I can zoom in on a track. We have a trim tool, and the trim tool, you've got a standard mode where you're just trimming the ends or the fronts. You can basically time compress and expand using a tool. You can like scrub the audio. You can loop the audio depending on what tool you have selected. Most of the time, I just have the standard trim. So I can come here and I can trim back the audio. I can do it from the front or the back. Okay, so then we have my normal cursor. Wherever I drop it in the session is where I would play from. So that is, a useful tool. Then we've got my grabber tool, and there are different things. You can grab for time, you can separate, and then you can grab like object. And I generally have it set up here. So let's do this. Let's come here, go back to my cursor tool, and I'm used to my multi-tool, and I'll show you the multi-tool here in a second. So let's create a couple of different things. So let's come here. We've got the separation grabber. So if I'm in my separation grabber and I've highlighted this, I go to my separation grabber, then I should be able to separate what got highlighted, and now I've created a new clip. My object, I'm able to grab multiple objects by holding the shift key, And now I have control over these three items. And then the time one, you're basically grabbing a section of time. So yeah, so that's that. Then you've got like a scrub tool. So you can, like, if you're really listening for like a breath or something you want to take out, you can go into your scrub tool and be like, all right, it ends right there. Or you're wanting to cut a T or an S, shorten that up, or somebody in their dialogue was, you know, and this and that, and you wanted to get rid of the ands and, just have it say this and that. You can scrub and, okay, there's where the D ends of the and, boom, I can cut that out. So that's what that tool is used for. So now you have the pencil tool. You can use it to, like if you're wanting to come here, this is the volume line of my waveform. I can come and draw in some automation. So then if I, run my, if you look, like if I hit play, you should be able to watch the volume. It goes in and out, and so now I've written automation. I'm able to do that with the pencil tool. There are other ways to do that. So yeah, so that is the fourth thing that I wish I knew, were how to deal with the tools. But the final tool that I'm going to talk about is this multi-tool. So if you hit this, like if I'm just on the cursor, it's just the cursor. But if I hit this little bar above the cursor, depending on where my mouse or cursor is on the waveform depends on what it does. So I'm at the top of the waveform, and it's just, I can drop my playhead. If I go down, whatever my mode selector is, I can now select the whole region, come back up, or the whole clip. Regions were, old school Pro Tools. So I can select this whole thing, come back here, play that. If I go to the end, I'm now in trim mode. So I'm able to trim front to back, same thing up here. But then there's one other thing that it does. So if I come to the top corner, I can now start to apply fades. So that multi-tool I tend to work with all the time. And it just allows me to, anywhere I'm at on this waveform, and I can change the waveform height. We got the extreme, and then, we can go like micro. And that's a little hard to work with when you're editing, but if you're trying to hide a track you've already edited or you've done whatever, you can just kind of hide it out of the way. But yeah, that's just a really good way to do that. So now we've got the tools, we've got the modes, we've got the different windows. You've got your mix, edit, and then you have the different types of tracks. So those are 4 of the 5. Now the 5th one, Pro Tools has, and most DAWs have this, have the ability to have a set of, you have your traditional key commands, and when you're working in a DAW, key commands really help. So like, say I want to cut this section out. If I can come up here and I can go to edit, cut, right? And that cuts it, but that just really takes a long time. Pro Tools has the standard Mac or PC commands. So Command X or Control X, depending on whether you're Mac or PC, you know that in Word it cuts, in everything else it cuts. So if I come here and I hit Command X, that cuts. Well, Pro Tools went one step further, and other DAWs have the same thing, and they created single key commands. So you don't have to hold down that command or control key. They have commands that do that, because they didn't do it to all the commands. There are so many deep commands that sometimes you have to hold 4 keys to get to. And those are ones that maybe you don't use on a regular basis. but I want to come in here, and if I want to use a single key command, one of the biggest things is like if this A to Z button isn't on, like, so do you see where it's highlighted? If I click it and it's now orange, if that's not on, I can't, I'm hitting X here, which is the single key command. That doesn't work. I can hit Command X and that works. And then, but I cannot have it work. So if you ever open a session and you find that somehow this got toggled off because your single key commands aren't working, you click that and now you can come in, and if I just hit the X key, I'm cutting. If I hit the Z key, I'm undoing. If I hit the C key, I just copied, and now let's just paste it with the V key. So all the same type of commands you would use in Word, in any other program to do cut, copy, paste, undo, they're there. I have a Pro Tools keyboard, and it gives me the highlighted keys that I do, like as I've been operating the session. T is a zoom in, R is a zoom out. But the ones that I use the most, the T and the R to zoom in, zoom out, the traditional Z, X, C, V, B. B means separate, so I can separate and make two clips here. So now I have two clips, separate that out. But then the real big ones, the A key, if I wanted to trim just the very front end of this and get rid of all that crap, if I hit the A key, that gets rid of my front. If I hit the Z or the S key, that gets rid of everything behind my cursor. Super great when you're like in your edits and doing different things. Those keys are really great. The D key, you have the fade to front. The G key, you have the fade to end. I call them the GD fades. And then if you, let's do this. Let's cut out this. Let's go in. Let's butt these up together. So then if we come here, let's get back to our slip mode. So if we come here and I highlight this section here and I hit the F key, then it creates my default fade between the two regions or the two clips. So yeah, those are the 5 different things. You've got tracks, the type of tracks that are there, whether you're wanting mono, stereo, all the way up to surround, depending on if you're in Pro Tools Ultimate. You have the types of tracks, so whether it's an audio track, an instrument track, MIDI track, fader, just like a fader, an auxiliary input, all those different things. There are some more advanced tracks that we'll get into. But yeah, so you have those. You got your mix edit window. They allow you to, this is a really great way when you're mixing to not kind of look at the waveforms and see what's going on. Sometimes visually seeing the waveforms you get into a certain mindset. So if you're like just looking at that window, not seeing the waveforms, and you're dealing with faders and you have the ability to, use your mouse and grab the fader and do whatever you want. Option key takes you back to everything being 0. So yeah, that allows you to do that. So, when I'm in mix mode, I tend to mix here. When I'm in edit mode, I'm here, and record mode and all of that, I'm like usually here. I have multiple displays, so half the time I have the mix window on one, the edit window on the other, because occasionally you want to go in and you heard some weird breath or something, and it's just easy to run across to the other screen. But that command equals or control equals gets you back and forth between the two windows. Or if you had a control surface, they have the options to get you there. Then you got your different modes. You've got your slip, shuffle, spot, grid. Learning those, really, really important. And I wish I knew more about them when I first started, because that was a big thing. And then the different tools. The tool that I use the most is that MultiTool. I rarely use the scrub. Um, just being honest, I rarely use the pencil. And because I have the R and T single key command keys that zoom me in and zoom me out, I rarely use that zoom key. So my window, my tool looks like that 99% of the time. Occasionally, I will use that pencil tool in an automation mode because there are some advanced things that you can do with the pencil, creating like triangle lines and square lines and randoms, and so you can do some interesting things, and that's in some advanced mixing stuff that we'll get to in way future videos, but not in this series. So thank you for watching today. Again, my name is Michael Mon, owner-operator of Studio M Mastering, and this has been part 2 of my 5-part series, 5 Things I Wish I Knew When I First Started Pro Tools. It would be great if you would like and subscribe to the channel. Leave me a comment down below. If you have any questions, definitely willing to answer. Looking to help improve the audio community. Again, I'm Michael Mon, owner-operator of Studio M Mastering, and thank you for being here.